Good afternoon, everyone. So Fortescue has never used uncertainty as an excuse for inaction. We're applying the same determination and never give up attitude that has turned us into one of the world's largest and lowest cost iron ore producers to accelerate decarbonisation on a global scale. Leading from the front with our decarbonisation program, we've set a real zero target for 2030 to catalyse real action and real solutions, which we're deploying in our own backyard. And if you were here earlier this morning, you might have heard my colleague Steve Cole talk about some of the practical actions we're putting in place in our operations today. It would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that the global tide is constantly shifting. And while at times we may seem like an outlier, the reality is that there's a growing cohort of like-minded companies who share our ambition and see the immense scale of the opportunity before us. Our relentless pursuit of Real Zero has enabled us to seek out this cohort and to work with them on conceptualising, developing and deploying the solutions needed to profitably decarbonise heavy industry. And in doing so, we've found ourselves amongst those who don't accept the status quo, who demand better solutions and drive the innovation to make Real Zero a reality. Our work embedding these solutions into some of the world's largest, lowest cost, most efficient mining operations enables us the unparalleled opportunity to learn by doing, as we rebuild our operations piece by piece without fossil fuels. Through these learnings and these partnerships, we've built an incredible foundation towards an even greater ambition, to find pathways to decarbonise the steel industry, which contributes over 7% of global CO2 emissions today. And while the mountain ahead of us is huge, the industry is not sitting idle. We are already seeing clear beginnings of this new industrial revolution in one of mankind's oldest industries. Of the 7% CO2 emissions that come from steel making today, more than 80% comes from the iron making part of the process, which is effectively the age-old process of combining iron ore and coking coal in a blast furnace to make pig iron. It's an incredibly efficient and cost-effective process that has been fine-tuned for many decades, but it is also incredibly harmful to the environment. Alternative methods to reduce iron without coking coal have been known for many decades, but it's only recently that we've started to see the technology development and cost reduction of deploying these pathways changing at a rate not seen before. These fossil fuel-free steel-making pathways can utilise the vast quantities of free sunshine we've been blessed with in the Pilbara, which is some of the best solar in the world, and it's beating down over the world's largest iron ore province. The origins of iron making stem from areas where coal was located next to iron ore deposits. In a renewable energy future, the Pilbara has exactly that, an incredible solar resource co-located with immense ore reserves. This presents an immense strategic natural advantage that we would be foolish to overlook, allowing us to ship the sunlight direct to the steelmakers to do what they do best. At Fortescue, our vision is to convert our nearly 200 million tonnes per annum of iron ore into more than 100 million tonnes per annum of green iron metal, eliminating over 200 million tonnes of CO2 each year. We've invested billions in our pit-to-port infrastructure with a network of rail exceeding 750 kilometres, huge and expanding energy network across the Pilbara through our Pilbara Energy Connect, and 3 ship loaders servicing 5 berths, all of which can be used to export green metal. We've been developing and testing the renewable energy and the iron-making technology in our operations today, which can power the Pilbara's iron-making potential tomorrow. This started with the decarbonisation of our existing mining operations and has grown to include our Christmas Creek Green Metal project. Before I explain more about the project, let me set the scene. The existing direct reduced iron, or DRI, technologies prevalent in the industry are suited to high-grade, low-gang ore, which makes up roughly 5% of seaborne global supply. Some of these technologies have been around for 50 plus years, but are now being adapted to use hydrogen. And although WA is blessed with vast quantities of iron ore, it doesn't make up the 5% of ores that these existing DRI technologies are built for. It is often said that necessity is the mother of invention, and the necessity to demonstrate the pathway for our mid-grade hematite ore is significant for Fortescue, but also for the Pilbara. This is exactly what our demonstration facility under construction at Christmas Creek is designed to achieve, both technology and product validation with our customers. Our Christmas Creek project will use green hydrogen already in production at Christmas Creek, coupled with a two-step hydrogen reduction and electric smelting process to produce a high-purity, transportable green iron product. This will be the first green iron plant in Australia producing iron metal with green hydrogen. So when we use a two-step process to make green metal, the smelting step provides the opportunity to remove all of the impurities and leave us with a very high purity, low gang iron product that has significant value and use beyond its green credentials. It's not hot briquetted iron, it's an entirely new ultra high purity transportable green metal that has the potential to help steelmakers move down the cost curve. We'll be commissioning the Christmas Creek plant next year, and it will pave the way for future commercial scale projects. This demonstration facility builds on existing lab and pilot scale work, which is already producing green metal at 98% plus purity from our Fortescue 56% grade iron ore. And I've brought with me a little sample if anyone wants to come and have a look after the presentation. So this is, you can see a photo of it on the screen, but it's some of the green metal we've produced in our lab facility at 98% plus purity iron. In parallel, we continue to invest in next generation electrochemical tech that has the potential for over 30% greater energy efficiency than hydrogen pathways. Our direct electrochemical reduction technology is called LEADER and has been delivering some compelling results at lab scale, proving that we can use Fortescue's hematite ores to make green iron metal using direct electrochemical reduction at high efficiency levels. The next step for this technology will be broader plant design and validation of an end-to-end process at lab scale before we commission a demonstration facility to further validate this pathway. All right, I'm going to change pace for a moment and play you a short video, and then I'm going to ask you to go on a little time travel journey with me. So bear with me, we'll watch the video first. Okay, so for a moment I'm going to transport us to 2040. In addition to the AI, autonomous vehicles, virtual reality that have transformed our daily lives, climate change and sustainability efforts have driven significant global changes in both energy and steelmaking. At Fortescue, we're still mining iron ore, but we've turned our 200 million tonnes of annual production into 100 million tonnes of green iron metal, and it's being sent to our steelmaking customers all around the world. We paved the way to do this economically, producing a green metal which competes with grey alternatives, and we convinced the global steel industry to adopt our green solution. Ultimately, our competitive advantage was our immense solar resources in the Pilbara, coupled with our partnership with China, enabling us to deliver renewable power and hydrogen at record low cost. Iron ore continues to be exported from the Pilbara, but there's a heightened reliance on local processing of ore into green metal to drive economic value. There has been a significant reduction in steel industry emissions in China, and their vision for blue skies and green cities is within grasp. Auto manufacturers are receiving unprecedented orders for their premium fully green vehicles made from near-zero emission green steel originating from Pilbara mines. The Pilbara green metal industry is creating up to 20,000 direct jobs and up to $170 billion of revenue for the Australian economy. It is an absolute game changer for Australia. But change of this magnitude doesn't just happen. To make this future a reality, we will need to challenge the long-standing rhetoric that green metal can't be done profitably in the Pilbara. Fortescue is tackling that by unlocking each of the key steps in the green metal value chain. So let's start with green energy. We know that we need to get the cost of firmed green power down below about US $35 per megawatt hour to enable economically viable green metal. And when we think about how to get firmed green power down below $35 US, there are essentially three key levers. The first is simply to build less solar, less wind, because panels and turbines are more efficient. And that's where we really need technology advancements to come into play, and we're working closely with leading Chinese OEMs to drive this hard on things like perovskite solar panel technology. The second is to counteract our high labour costs in the Pilbara by reducing on-site installation of solar. Think prefabrication, robotics for automated install. The third is being able to store more green energy cheaply so we can firm our solar power in times of lower renewable generation. This is where cheap battery storage becomes so critical, and why the 40% drop in large-scale BESS storage costs in the last year alone gives us a lot of confidence. We also know we need to produce hydrogen more efficiently, and that we can probably use a less pure hydrogen gas for metal making than when we are making ammonia, for example. To achieve this, we're working both with OEMs and doing our own internal R&D on simplified electrolyser design. Next, we have to ensure that our metal making technology is energy efficient, that it's only using the minimum amount of hydrogen it absolutely needs to, that it's reliable, and that it's producing a product which has a high value and use for steel mill customers. And lastly, we need to build a shared understanding of the value and use of a high purity, I mentioned before, 98% plus iron content metal, which can be used to improve scrap utilisation and enable higher quality steel output in an EAF, or can be used to incrementally reduce emissions into a blast furnace, basic oxygen furnace process. We absolutely believe that in addition to avoiding a carbon price, there's likely consumer appetite to pay for green end products which incorporate green steel, especially in the early transition phases. But just to be clear, while we're continuing to explore that opportunity, we're absolutely not counting on a green premium to enable the business case for green metal. We know that long term, these projects have to stand on their own 2 feet and they must compete with grey. Change of this nature also doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're going to need the entire steel ecosystem to come on this journey with us. OEMs, governments, steel makers, steel end users. Last year, Fortescue signed MOUs with 3 leading steel mills in China, Baowu, Hunan Steel and CITIC Special Steel, and we've been working very closely with these mills on the technology needed to make green steel a reality. A few weeks ago, Fortescue announced that we have signed first-of-their-kind agreements with some of the world's most advanced green energy manufacturers. BYD, a global leader in electric vehicles and in battery manufacturing and development, Longi, a solar technology and manufacturing giant, XCMG, a leading construction and equipment manufacturer, and Envision Energy, a pioneer in wind and energy storage. These agreements build on Fortescue's global innovation ecosystem and give us access to the newest and best technologies in China, partnering in a fundamentally different way to enable the cost outcomes needed for green metal to displace grey. This year, we've also seen significant commitment from the Australian government to progress bilateral cooperation on steel decarbonisation with China, setting up the Steel Decarbonisation Policy Dialogue earlier this year. And they've announced over $1 billion of green iron grants to give the industry a head start. We know that doing green metal at scale in the Pilbara will require strategic investment and continued ambition and bold vision from our government. In summary, the global steel industry is at a crossroads. It accounts for 7% of global CO2 emissions today, and production is growing. Yet we know that we need to cut emissions by over 80% by 2040. This presents one of the greatest challenges in our industry and is easily the biggest challenge I will tackle in my lifetime. When we're faced with a challenge of this magnitude, it's easy to think of all the reasons why it can't work, but no great industry transformation ever resulted from that type of thinking. Australia now stands at a unique intersection of climate responsibility and economic opportunity. The transition to green steel is no longer a distant vision, it's a strategic imperative, and one that can reshape the future of Australian economic prosperity if we act now with conviction and vision. Australia's natural advantages in green iron are undisputed. The hurdles that prevent us from being commercially viable today, which are predominantly high labour costs, technology inefficiencies, long lead time for approvals, those are all challenges which are well within our grasp to solve. Fortescue remains resolutely focused on unlocking the economics of green metal in the Pilbara to realise our vision of producing 100 million tonnes per annum of green metal, eliminating over 200 million tonnes per annum of CO2 emissions. Thank you.